Chapter 4, A Gentleman's Duel. I don't know who the fuck you think you are. You could have killed me. She stomped right up to him, stopping inches short of making contact. Arms stiff at her sides, she stared up at him through narrow slits, trying like hell to not get distracted by his dimples or lightly bearded jawline. Whoa there. Easy does it. What are you even talking about? He cocked an eyebrow. You know exactly what I mean, Mr. Douglas. You nearly killed me back there on the curve. She crossed her arms. The look of recognition washed over his face, sending his hands in the air in defeat. Yeah, now you remember, ass. You're the one who pulled out in front of me. He paced back and forth before reinvading her personal space. Her eyes pulled to the tattoo on his shoulder. Hold on now. I wasn't speeding, and I laid on my horn for almost 5 seconds just in case. I even swerved in the middle of the road early, putting myself at risk to oncoming traffic. If anything, I prevented you from killing me. He promptly put his hands on his hips, taking a step forward, causing her to retreat a step. With a smart-ass smirk, he pointed right in her face. She cowered, struggling to find a logical path to her righteous denial. The rage in her belly gave way to the flush of her cheeks, partly out of habit, but mostly out of embarrassment. Zella covered the sides of her face with her sleeve-swallowed hands. I think you owe me the apology, Ms. Grimsby. His self-righteous grin ate right through her, but giving in wasn't in her nature. Leave it to someone like you to... She couldn't do it. The resolve faltered, and her damn pride attempted yet another hijacking of her sanity. I don't think... Come on, Zella. Admit you were wrong and move on with it, she thought, biting her lip. Nope, she wouldn't give him the satisfaction. I'm sorry. She averted her eyes, partially covering her glasses. Erik brandished a huge smile, almost going red in the face. See, that wasn't that hard, was it, Ms. Grimsby? Ugh, he just couldn't help himself. He just had to rub it in. Her surname out of that mouth was nails on a chalkboard. The hell with that. Shields up. Yeah, I'm sorry. Her posture straightened, pointing her own finger right back at him. No amount of sympathy, sweat, or tattoos on bare muscular arms were going to make up for this man's obstinate ways. I'm sorry. I didn't sideswipe you when I had the chance. And I swear to God, if you call me Ms. Grimsby one more time, my name is Zella. I'm barely 30 years old, but you make me sound like I'm a 50-year-old widow, for God's sake. He rocked back, relaxing his stance, gently nudging an early evening lightning bug from his shoulder, not even looking at her as she delivered her justice. Are you even listening to me? Yeah, I'm listening. Hell, my deaf grandfather is listening a quarter mile up the road. The indifference in his body language sent a pang of hurt throughout her heart, catching her off guard. Panic seeped in. She didn't know where to go from here. Zella, are you done? He stepped forward, having the distance, leaving mere inches. Why did he have to be so close? Yes, she said with 1/10 the force of her previous words. Great. Now he uses my name in a calm, soothing tone and decides to stare into me. It's bad enough that this gorgeous place belonged to him. Thank you. Oddly, she watched as he lifted a dirty hand and placed it on her shoulder and gave it a light squeeze. She caught herself holding her breath at his touch. I have to apologize. I'm afraid I can't continue with whatever this is. He gestured between them. Can you give me what you came all the way out here for? I have some personal matters I'm dealing with at the moment. Yes, of course. Zella reached into her back pocket and produced the envelope. The bottom had fallen out of the energy that coursed between them a mere seconds before. Here you go. It's the money for the items you left at the store. God, this sucked. Half of her wanted to slap him across the face for being such a pig, but the other half wanted to give him a hug and tell him everything would be okay. Okay, then, he said, gesturing with the envelope. If there's nothing else, I kind of need to get back to it. He half turned towards the garden, but kept his eyes on her. Sorry again, Zella, for the near miss. I'm glad you weren't hurt. Not fucking fair. This man just diffused her wanton rage like a ticking time bomb, and the lump in her throat let on just how powerless she was. She would turn and leave this heathen to his sanctuary and never look back. But where her trusty logic usually dwelled, a twinge of curious empathy glued her feet to the ground. Wait, I forgot to ask. I mean, you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but did you find what you were looking for earlier? She stepped forward a step, freezing him in place a few feet away. You know, with your grandmother. Yes and no. It's complicated, actually. Turns out there's more to the story than just a few scribbles in the book. At least that's what my non-biological grandpa told me. Oh, wow. So he knew. Does that mean that this Cameron guy is your grandfather? It would appear so, but apparently that's just the beginning of the story. The only problem is Grandpa Douglas doesn't know any of the particulars, so all I really have are the things that she left behind, at least right now. I can't help but notice you're alone out here. If you wanted, you could talk to me about it. Her sudden urge to aid this man left her insides in knots. The nerves in her body couldn't keep up with the crisscross signals. He chuckled a bit, catching her off guard. What's so funny? Nothing. It's just, now look at who's assuming whose marital status. Oh, shit. Sorry. I didn't mean... He cut her off. It's a joke, Zella. Relax. He grinned, and she cracked a smile of her own, elated to be off the hook. You really need to work on your timing, Mr. Douglas. She feigned a pompous smile. Agreed, but on a separate note, if your offer still stands, I wouldn't be opposed to some company. He pointed over his shoulder. If she was the one to suggest it, why should her heart be pounding so fast? Yeah, it stands. For now. She started towards him, wondering how and why this entire situation had come to pass at all. Have a seat under the pergola. I'll get a fire going in the pit and grab us some drinks. What's your poison? Hemlock? He laughed at his own lame joke, the nerve of this guy. I try not to drink on an empty stomach. Water is fine. Oh, that won't do. I have just the thing. You eat meat, right? Do I eat meat? I've dined on almost every exotic meat known to man before the age of 20. Bring it on. Zella's face lit up, almost in sync with the backyard lamps around them. Well, 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 the plot thickens. Who would have guessed? Zella, the traveling carnivore. He shot her a smile as he about-faced, leaving her to find her seat. It's got a nice ring to it. Sort of rolls off the tongue, he called out as he disappeared through the French doors. She rolled her eyes at his attempted humor, if only to herself. This was the least she could do, lending an ear after all. She did sort of make an ass of herself, and maybe not just once. Yeah, that's all this was, she told herself, tapping her foot as she twirled the floppy cuffs of the cardigan. Chapter 5. Moonlight over Maryland. Hot dogs? She asked, taking the long stick from his hands. He couldn't help but notice her genuine smile as the flames of the fire pit flickered off her glasses. Maybe it was there before? Don't worry, they're Nathan's. I'm pretty sure that qualifies as exotic somewhere. He took a seat next to her, settling in. Oh, I almost forgot. I've got buns. Mustard and ketchup. He grabbed the plastic sack, placing it on the small wicker table between them. Ooh, pulling out all the stops, are we? She smiled, dangling the frank at the edge of the flames. He caught himself watching her face, shaking his head as he averted his eyes. Okay, Erik, get real, man. Not happening. So how did it go with your grandpa? You seem pretty calm about the ordeal. I'm not sure calm is the word I'd use. I think helpless is closer to the truth. It sucks because I thought I knew her. His focus drifted within the flames. Wrapping his head around the revelations would be impossible without the one person who had all the answers. Helpless? How so? Isn't there someone you can talk to about it? What about your dad? Yeah, maybe I could if it were 10 years ago. After he and Mom split, he opted to move across the country and drink himself to death. And honestly, I'm not sure he'd know anyway. He and my grandmother didn't have the best relationship. But let's face it, if my not-grandpa didn't know much, I highly doubt there would be anybody else. He sighed, rotating his sizzling frank. Out of the corner of his eye, she watched his expression. I don't mean to beat a dead horse, and you can tell me to shut up if you want, but what exactly did your, not-grandpa say? Maybe there are details you overlooked because of your, mental state. You didn't seem to be in a good place when you shot out of the shop earlier. The care in her words surprised him. Minutes ago, she was at his throat wanting to avenge their near miss, but now, for whatever reason, it was like a totally different person sat next to him. I don't think it'll change anything, but here goes. He said she returned from Europe in the summer of '47. They met at a hospital in Baltimore where she started as a nurse. Grandma turned him down when he asked her on a date for nearly 2 weeks before agreeing to seeing a movie at the cinema. Dang, Amelia, playing hard to get. My kind of girl, Zella said with a laugh. Caught off guard, her frank nearly went up in flames. Erik offered her a bun and she accepted with a nod. Yeah, he said with a chuckle. Apparently Grandpa Joe showed up to the ER every night with flowers and made a big show of trying to court her. I guess she felt sorry for him at some point and finally caved. Ah, the persistence of the silent generation. It's kind of romantic, or at least it was back then. These days, a guy would be arrested for stalking if he kept showing up somewhere like that. She grinned, dressing her dog with a single string of mustard before taking a bite. Still chewing, she added, "Why is that so good?" Not what he expected from a wallflower. She became even more of an anomaly by the minute. Where was I? Oh, they went to the movies, but Grandpa said he could tell that she wasn't at all interested, like she was protecting him from something or not telling him everything. And, she said with a full mouth of hot dog, and he had an inkling as to what it was, but didn't know for sure until he asked her out dancing the following week. She declined him and told him never to come back, that she couldn't see him anymore. That's when he pulled her aside and told her that he knew. No offense, but I'm on the edge of my seat. Don't stop now. Nostalgic love stories are a guilty pleasure of mine. She leaned in. He took a deep breath and continued. He told her he knew she was pregnant. She denied it, even calling him rude for saying such a thing to a lady. But as was his nature, he persisted. He said there was nothing to be ashamed of and that he would be honored to stand by her through the ordeal, even if only as a friend. Oh my God, that's literally the sweetest thing I've ever heard. You're telling me. Eventually, she came clean and told him the truth. They didn't start out as a couple, though. According to his story, it wasn't until 6 months after my dad was born that they had their first kiss. He admitted she didn't love him for the first few years, but she did respect his honor and his friendship. As time passed and her heart healed, the love grew until they were married. Erik turned his gaze to her in time to see her wiping her tears from under her eyes. This woman was a roller coaster of emotion, apparently. Zella, you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. I just got some ash in my eye or something. Mm-hmm. Sure you did. If it makes you feel any better, I may have gotten something in my eye earlier when he told me the story. So, back to the task at hand, Mr. Douglas. She grinned. Was that all? Did she ever mention to him who the father was or anything else? Other than what I just shared, she only told him that she met the man while touring Scotland and England the year after the war ended. They had gotten serious, but when the man's family found out about his intentions to marry her, the powers that be conspired to keep them apart. They fought to stay together, but it wasn't enough in the end. Oh, that's terrible. I can't imagine knowing you can't be with the one you love, let alone having their child. She must have been a strong woman, your grandmother. The strongest. Her greatness would never be in question as far as he was concerned. Maybe that's why not knowing everything bothered him so much. Even still, it doesn't excuse keeping me in the dark. I have a right to know who my family is, whether she deems me worthy of knowing or not. Erik got up, grabbed the poker, and he stoked the fire, sending speckles of embers high into the air. I'm sure she had her reasons, Erik. Zella joined him near the fire pit, giving him a few feet of space between. You mentioned she left some things behind. Anything of note? I'm not sure, to be honest. Grandpa Joe gave me a small locked antique chest made of metal and a letter she wrote for me. He turned his head to see her looking back up at him. She didn't turn away or blush like the other times he lingered. Did you read it? I did. And? You're really going to have to stop making me beg for answers, Mr. Douglas. Inquiring minds want to know. Well, at least I do. They shared a laugh. Who knew she could be funny? The plot thickens even further still, he thought. It said I should never stop following my gut and that she loved me. She said all things in life happen for a reason, and it's my job to find out why they were meant to be, why they are all perfect, even the moments we regret. His heart skipped and goosebumps prickled along his arms. I'm beginning to see why Amelia and my dad were friends. They must have had belonged to some cryptic wisdom club or something. She offered him a smile. That said, it seems to be a solid advice, though I'd be the first to admit that I would act like a screaming toddler when it came to taking it. Just ask my dad. Her charm in that moment warmed him more than the fire. Focus, Erik. Back to the task. You're not wrong. I'm terrible at knowing what's best for me. You said it yourself. Grimy hat, stained jeans, and boots I should leave outside. And what was the other thing? Oh, yeah. You're not surprised someone like me would be tossing out my grandmother's heirlooms for money. Erik watched her face as the smile faded into embarrassment. She stepped back a step. Wait. I don't know what to say. I didn't know you then. I'm sorry. I really am. What? Now that you've seen my little place and I've fed you, suddenly you don't think the same? That's not fair. You called me a feral librarian and a cat lady. Her smile slowly crept back to her face. He gave her an ornery grin in return. Whew, he almost blew it. His attempts at being funny went too far, and he almost pushed her right out the door. Well, in my defense, I did get the cat lady part right. You jerk, she swatted at his shoulder with her sleeve. And maybe the feral part as well. He failed to contain his laughter, sending her into a playful pout with her arms crossed. I'll show you feral, Mr. Douglas. Wow, she was kind of cute when flustered. I'll have to remember that for later. I'm sure you will, Ms. Grimsby. Of that I have no doubt. She play-growled at his jest, and the two finished the banter with smiles and flushed faces. So what's next for you? She asked, breaking the short silence. That's easy. Tomorrow, I'll question your dad. Like you planned, that little nugget hit her like a ton of bricks. My dad? She furrowed her brow. He already told you what he felt obliged to tell you. Trust me, he's not about to divulge anything he hasn't already. Oh, I know, he replied, a sheepish grin on his face. It's unrelated, sort of. You know that letter she left me? Yeah. Well, it had 3 different receipts inside. 2 from years ago and 1 from 6 months ago, right before she passed. What does that have to do with this? It's a service order signed by your dad for a replacement skeleton key for the metal chest. And you think there'll be a clue to your family mystery inside? She closed the distance. I do. He faced her completely, looking her dead in the eyes. Is it the best idea to get your hopes up? It could be personal stuff. Her voice trailed off, reciprocating his gaze. Either way, Ms. Grimsby, I regret to inform you that you will have to put up with me one more time. Last time, I promise. His words trailed into a whisper, and there he froze, truly seeing the features of her face for the first time. The freckles that lined her cheeks, the slope of a button nose. Bits of escaping hair fell in her green eyes, tousled by the breeze. Where did you come from, Zella Grimsby? He thought. Reading her was proving impossible. One second, her pretentious mouth was cutting him to pieces, and the next... Well, even having the thought at all was preposterous. Lost. The moment lingered a beat too long. She whispered, need to go. She stepped away from him, breaking the subtle string that joined them moments before. He sighed, scratching his head. That was interesting, if nothing else. But the distant tingle of regret left him shook. Of course, it is getting late. He busied himself with the dinner things, trying to shake off the awkwardness. Heading for the gate, she paused and turned around. Erik? Yeah, he said, looking up. Here we go again. I'm sorry about your grandma, and I'm sorry about my attitude earlier and for making assumptions about you. She looked around his small piece of paradise. And? He asked with a smile. And I'm sorry I almost killed you. I'll see you tomorrow, Erik. Or not. You don't have to if you don't want to. I think I'm just going to go. Good night. She fidgeted in place. He sighed with a smile, raising his hand to calm her. No need to apologize, Zella. Really. Well, maybe for almost killing me, but the sass I don't mind at all. Not from you. His heart raced at the sight of her blushing, barely noticeable across the darkened yard. His grandmother's past swirled in his mind, answers only leading to more questions. The plot had thickened indeed. Good night, Zella.